Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We are here in a live interview with Sukhpal Grewal. I'm Marinella, and I'm a visual artist. I'm co-founder of Art Classes Group, is a platform for visual arts. You can find out more information about us on our website, artclassesgroup.com. And our program, it is called Don't Just Make Art, Let's Talk About Art. So today we are going to find out the story of Sukhpal and about his artworks. So how are you, and welcome, Sukhpal.
Thank you, Marinella, for inviting me. Great to be here.
Thank you so much. We are looking forward, to share, if you can share with us all your knowledge and thoughts about art. So when I contacted you, Sukhpal, you gave me the website of pixels.com where you have most of your works.
Yeah.
Yes, and I noticed that there is an impressive collection of your artworks. We are really curious, what is your background in art, from where your passion for art started?
Okay. It goes back a long time. As you can see, I'm not very young anymore. I started around the age of 9 when I went to school in India, and I had this most amazing art teacher who inspired me and who really encouraged me throughout my time in school. So that was my starting point. I grew to love drawing, painting, learning how to use different materials and techniques. So that's where it developed from. I continued with art when I was in college, maybe not as seriously as I was doing it previously, but it was already there. So that was my starting point. I continued painting, drawing throughout my life, even though I was in full time work. In fact, one of the first paintings I created for us when my wife and I moved to our first flat and there was nothing on the walls. So I dug out all my art materials and started again. It's quite challenging when you move countries and you want to settle down and try and follow your passion as well. So it was quite hard in the beginning. I did a few evening classes in colleges. I didn't find those very inspiring. I joined some community groups. Those were slightly better. The mix of people was quite good. But what I decided to do after that was to continue learning myself. I had done a correspondence course as well through various organizations. So it gave me enough material to keep working on my own.
Yeah.
Um, in as much as the last 10 odd years, I've been part of an art gallery in East London. It's a gallery run by mature people for mature people. So that was great work. I did that for about 2, 3 years and loved every minute because I got to meet a lot of different artists and all of them doing their own thing. And it sort of helped me kind of see my future vision with art. I retired a few years ago and I decided to do something within art. It was not very clear in the beginning. I wasn't sure how I was going to take it forward. But yeah, I think when you were opening your school, Marinelle, I met somebody there who
Yeah.
introduced me to a group of a local group of retired people, and they were starting an art group, a drawing group. So I've been running that for the last few years. So again, that has kept my passion going. I've been working with the group for just over 4 years now. Some people learned drawing from scratch. Others had already done some work previously. But
Yeah,
it's about keeping that passion going.
it's true.
Regardless of how old you are, whether you're young or old, it's keeping that alive. And I think drawing, painting, art in general is a great medium for you to communicate with people because when you don't have art, you have a very bland society. You have
Yeah.
people who are growing up with maybe a lot of material things, but nothing or not full appreciation of beauty. So I think that bit is really important.
It's true.
So yeah, that's how I started, and that's where I am at the moment.
It's so I'm going to start sharing some of your artworks with the
Sure.
audience, and maybe if you can tell us more about your style of work,
Yeah.
about the themes of that we can find in your pictures. So I'm going to start first of all with landscapes,
Yeah.
and what particular technique did you use or materials did you use for
This
yeah, this
is
thing.
this is oil painting on canvas,
Yeah,
and with oil paints, because it's a slow drying process between each time you apply paint.
yeah,
So I believe this painting of the Golden Temple, and this is based on a picture I'd taken previously. I think it took me around 4 months, because with each layer, once it dried, you then came back and
yeah,
developed the next one. What I was trying to do is not go with the interpretation that a lot of artists have of the Golden Temple. It's an
yeah,
extremely well photographed and sort of
yeah,
known subject. I just wanted my own angle on it, and what I loved was the structure of the building, um, and how the whole symmetry works.
yeah,
So I removed or I reorganized a few things that were in the background, which I think artistic license allows me to do that.
yes,
So yeah, it was concerted work for those few months, but I think the end result speaks for itself.
yes, yes. So the title is the Golden Temple. Is
Golden
it
Temple.
from? y- Yeah, is it from India?
It is from India, from North India.
North.
It's the holiest shrine for the Sikhs who come from the north part of India, from Punjab. And
Really?
so this is I think every Sikh in the world knows where this is.
Yes.
Yeah,
It is really impressive the reflection that you've done in the of the building in the water. Myself with the same. When I'm teaching about reflections in the water, is probably the most difficult thing, to
it is.
explain to students. And it's so amazing how you got this effect of reflection. It is really a nice warm light into your painting, which makes it indeed unique. Now there are some landscapes. I'm really interested about these ones. They have a feeling of impressionist style. Yeah, if you can tell us about these ones.
Yeah, I mean the first one. If you go back to the one with
Yeah,
the bluebells and Rolly Wood,
yeah,
this one is based on a picture one of my group, the art group, brought to me.
yeah,
And in the early stages of the lockdown, we had decided to carry on the group. We couldn't meet outside that we used to do before in one of the
yeah,
church halls. So we decided to use Zoom,
yeah,
and this was a demonstration to the class using the reference photograph, and it was to paint this in oil in a live session, which
oh.
I haven't done a live session of painting before. So that was the first challenge. What I
So
also
how?
realized,
Yes,
what I also realized is when you've got a landscape with this amount of detail,
yeah,
especially with the kind of leaves and the kind of light and shade you could
yeah,
see, it wouldn't make sense to go into minute details. So
yeah,
the impressionist style, and again, I like to hop between styles and ways of doing things. So for me, this was a far better option than trying to go into minute details. You have to remember, I've got 12 people watching me, and I'm trying to do this, and I've got to keep their interest. So I'm talking them through it and
really.
trying to paint at the same time. So it took more than one session in the end. I think
Yeah.
I finished it in 2 sessions.
So this was my question. How long it took for you this painting to accomplish?
It was 2 sessions. I'd say about 4, maybe 5 hours. I may have done a little bit extra here
Yeah.
and there. But for me, what was interesting was the path taking you into the woods in
Mm,
the darker parts,
yeah.
and how the composition sort of leads you into it.
Yeah.
And there were a few adjustments here and there, but the colors. I don't think this picture actually reflects it well enough, but no, it was very extremely vivid, and this
Yeah.
is early in the spring, so the
Yeah.
picture is great. Yeah.
And we have the next one. is very impressive, has a soft glow in there. The title is Punjab Village. It's really impressive.
Well, this is from a trip I made to India early in the year.
Yeah.
This is uh, one of our ancestral villages, and I the landscape in Punjab is dotted with small temples, which are based in little villages and towns. And the minute I approached this in the car with my relatives, it just blew me away. I had to stop. I didn't have a sketch pad with me, so I couldn't do a great deal. But I took still pictures and I did some video shoot as well. So I had enough reference material when I came back. And this is all done in one single session. This is
Yeah.
all live painting, not for an audience, but this is just something I wanted to test myself on. What I was also trying to create is more of an atmosphere.
Mm.
It was a very dull and overcast sky
Yes.
that day, but it wasn't uh, enough for what I was trying to do. So I played around with the sky. I played around with some of the background colors, and I did just wanted some faint references to the buildings in the distance because that's how they look. They look magical to me uh,
Yes.
in that afternoon.
It
Yep.
is really nice. And now it will start a new type of paintings. This one reflects more the traditional life from India, the people, culture. So it will be really interesting, to find out the stories behind these paintings and the
Yeah.
style, the techniques that you use.
Okay. Again, this one is oil. This was a commission for somebody,
Oh,
and they had an image in mind. They gave me an outline, some sort of black and white outline of this historical character from Indian, whether it's real history or mythology, I'm not sure. But the idea was to sort of give it my own interpretation. And this lady in the story, the way it goes, is she gave up the world for her true love. So it was about trying to evoke that feeling of she has renounced everything,
yeah.
and she played music, and that is how she connected with life around her. So her name was Mirabai, and she's a very well-known character in Indian history and mythology.
Oh, interesting, interesting. Indeed, you can just by looking at the picture, you can feel the tradition of India.
Yeah.
It's very nice the type of sketches that you've done as well, reflecting the life in India. So this particular one, what represents?
Um, Again, this is based in a region of India called Rajasthan. Again, this is in the north,
Yes.
but it's predominantly a desert region, and
Oh,
it's very dry mostly.
yes.
But what you find is that the buildings are amazing, the structures are amazing, and the ladies wear the most colorful clothing that you can ever imagine. So, and the men wear these most colorful turbans. So the contrast is huge.
Oh,
And this part of India has fascinated me. So I
yeah.
think in my last three trips that I've made to India, I've made sure I've been to Rajasthan to see it for myself,
Oh,
and it's unbelievable. And the people are amazing. They're so simple and down to earth. So again, this is inspired by that. It isn't somebody I actually saw,
yeah.
but this is from a kind of a composition I created. And because I love bits of architecture to come
Yeah.
into it, a lot of these pillars, they keep repeating themselves in a lot of my work because I think they frame the sketch or painting or whatever in a very nice way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice. And the same thing we can see reflected in the next artworks. It's
Yeah.
a different style here and different materials, I think.
It's actually acrylic, but
Acrylic.
I've used it with a lot of water. So
Yeah.
it appears more like watercolor,
Yes. Yeah.
but it's actually acrylic. And again, this is an image that inspired me. It wasn't a picture taken by me, but it was an image I saw which inspired me. And the colors again,
Yeah.
and the backgrounds again. What you find is the simplicity of life,
Yes.
and The pots keep reappearing in most of my work related to India.
Yeah.
I've also used a bit of pen and ink in some of the outlines. So this was a slightly different approach to what I normally do. But it was again trying different materials and trying different styles.
Just to reflect, more the theme
Yeah.
of traditional life.
Yeah.
This is so impressive. I mean, I'm curious to find out the story behind this painting. What does it mean, Punjabi welcome? I mean, when is it celebrated? Or
Well, this is at a wedding,
all
uh,
right,
at a
yes,
Sikh wedding. And what I was trying to do was to bring in the simplicity of the space.
yeah,
And I had these images of a temple, which is a very unusual structure. So really, I wanted to incorporate that structure into the kind of painting I was trying to create. I also didn't want to get into too much detail with the
yeah,
features of these characters. So in quite a few bits, I tended not to use the features in detail. And this is something I picked up in some of my early kind of training in India. But you don't necessarily have to get into that detail. But this one is a combination. There is detail in the outfits and the building, but very little. But the postures give it away. You can
yeah.
see that the lady is welcoming the bridegroom with a garland. Whether they do that in real life in this particular situation, I can't say, but I just wanted to create that. And I wanted a very simple background.
Yes, this is really interesting. So we have the characters that are so colorful, and the background has just a plain cerulean blue, and still we can feel, that warmth from that the atmosphere from India is really nice. It gives
And
you that feeling of yes, yeah,
this is one of my few watercolors. I tend to use very little watercolor,
yeah.
only because I got into oil at a very early age and then moved to acrylics when I came to this country. So this is one of the few times I've actually used watercolor. But I love watercolor. I wish I could do more of it.
Um, Again, another scene from Indian culture. Very nice. Does it reflect something? Is a particular subject in here?
Yes, I was trying to do a couple of different things. These are characters I actually saw in one of my trips. I'd hired a driver to drive me around these villages about 25 years ago.
Yeah.
I asked him to drive me around villages where there was no electricity. I wanted to see life as it was being led then, very simply. So in one of these villages, I came across a very large group. I've only taken three men in this one, but there was like 10, 15 of them sitting around in a group, all huddled and chatting to each other in the middle of the day. Uh, but what I also noticed in Rajasthan is in the traditional style, women had a separation from the men. So I've tried to build that separation with the little tree that has fallen just between them, if you can see it.
Yes.
So the women are there, and they take responsibility for the bringing up the children, but they somehow, at least that's what I saw then. What I observed was them having a very different life. But what was interesting is these men, the group, and how they were chatting. And when I took one of these pictures, I realized this man was actually smoking. And why the others were putting their heads down, I have no idea. But I like the light falling on the turbans from one end and
Yeah.
getting darker as it came down to the bottom. And also the folds in the fabrics. They were wearing these big blankets or shawls. I found those very interesting. And then I also in that area you find these old buildings and structures that you can see there. Very simple mud structures.
Mm.
Uh, so again, that's how these people have lived for hundreds, thousands of years.
Oh, amazing, amazing. Is such a, gives us the traditional feeling and full of symbols. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. I wouldn't realize if you didn't tell us. Uh, it's very, very nice to find out, the story behind each painting. It's
The
interesting.
other reason, sorry, Manala, if I can add this, my reason for trying to capture some of the old tradition or the way of life is because this is fast disappearing,
Yes.
which is fine. I mean, things have
Mm.
to change in countries and people have to move on. But I think the simplicity is changing in a very big way. So I thought I want to capture it while it's still there.
I have a feeling that, probably my generation and your generation as well, only we can have the feeling of how life was, the
No,
simplicity of life, how much happiness can bring.
yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, I'm thinking for the new generations, I don't know if they will have the chance to feel
No,
this
their
happiness.
lives are so different. And
Yes.
especially with the situation the world is in now with COVID, I think our world is going to change quite a bit.
Yeah. Even,
But
yes.
anyway,
It's true. It's true. So let's yes, here the same. We have a nice
yeah,
sketch, really nice, about the traditional life. So I think it's villagers with their cattle.
yeah, yeah. That's not a chariot, but a cart that they use for transporting goods and people. But again, you don't see that many of these anymore.
Yes, it's interesting in the sketch that has so much movement and it's very nice how you gave this effect through brush strokes. We can feel the speed as well. How did you reach to this effect?
Again, this is my use of acrylic with a lot of water. Um, because I use some very dark tones, I use a lot of raw umber
Right.
and burnt umber. So those are my main sort of colors, along with some lighter kind of shades of it. But I wasn't trying to capture every minute detail.
Mm.
I just wanted to get that feeling of movement and the dark shadows and the time of day when this picture was taken. So yeah, that was the idea. Again, these are all traditional Rajasthani villages.
I really like how you reflect the light into your paintings. Is such a warm light, that gives us the feeling indeed this is from somewhere else. This landscape, it does belong to a hot country, and
Yeah,
you gave
yeah.
very nice that feeling. And now here there are new techniques, different techniques. What kind of techniques did you use here?
Right. Now, in the last few years, I've been teaching myself digital art,
Yeah.
which is painting using a computer program and a tablet that which I can draw on directly. So I've learned this technique the hard way because I didn't send any lessons for it. But now it's quite satisfying because even though this is not oil or not acrylic, but it still allows me to create images. So even though these are traditional images, but using a modern medium where you build layers of paint and you keep reworking it until you get to the point where you're fairly satisfied. So yeah, this is a new approach, but I'm loving it. It's very very flexible as well.
Yeah. I think gives you the freedom, is it,
Uh,
to and probably digital work gives you freedom as well to work anywhere. You can just
and
take the
absolutely
tablet. Yeah, I think yeah.
anywhere
Very,
or anytime. I don't have to have natural light to sit and paint.
yeah.
I
Mm.
can be working at night if I choose to do this. So yeah, it gives you that opportunity.
Even if you are somewhere outdoors, you just can quickly sketch something. You don't need the entire set of
No,
paints and brushes. Yeah, so this is probably the advantage of digital work. And I think the next work, the same, is it? Yes, it is in the
yeah.
same style. Yes, it's called tea stall. The same from India.
Again from India. This is again from my recent trip. saw this man making tea just by the roadside. He hasn't got a proper space to work in, yet he's able to create whatever he needs to create with some very basic utensils. And the man sort of facing away from us, looking towards the tea stall, is the one with they don't drink tea in cups, they drink it in glasses. So he's holding up his glass of tea, and it's being served. And there are probably other people that I've left out because it was going to get too complicated. Again, it's digital art, but it's allowing you to create something in a more traditional way, and it's very very flexible.
Yeah.
But you have to remember with digital, uh, people make the mistake of thinking this is a photograph that's been colored in. It's not. It's a drawing that starts from scratch as you would on paper, and then you develop it and you add the colors as you go along. You add all the tones and create the shapes and everything that you would in a traditional painting.
Yeah.
It's just a very different approach.
So you have to give somehow in the same time the effect of a painted artwork. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
The next artworks, they're interesting because they reflect the history of the local community. And I know that I've seen these artworks in the exhibition that you had here in Slough in the Curve.
Yeah.
So it's really nice how you reflected the history of the local community and how does it look like now. So it's a comparison between two times. Yeah.
This was slightly challenging because obviously I didn't have any of my own sketches or material of this period. So the first challenge was to read up a little bit about the history of Slough and how there was a connection between Windsor and Slough. So when the railway came to Slough, um, Queen Victoria used to ride up in a horse carriage to Slough Station. And that's why Slough Station is very fancy. She would rest there until she could get a train into wherever she was going. Eventually, the line was built between Slough and Windsor. Remember, there's only one station at either end. So this was trying to look at the early stages of that. And also, if you see those buildings at the back, those are buildings created during Queen Victoria's reign for some of the people, her retinue that lived in Windsor, but they were given places to live in the edge of Herschel Park. And you can still see those buildings today. And then as you move lower, you can see some brickworks, some old brickworks that Slough was very famous for.
Yes.
And a lot of the transport was done by the canal, the Grand Union Canal branch that comes into Slough. So you've got that little boat showing just a little bit at the bottom. But the challenge was to try and get all this in one painting because I only had 3 other canvases because of the space I was going to display it in to try and get all this together. So I had to use old reference material and try and be creative with it in how I presented it.
It's
So, yeah,
true.
very different approach. So this work is now hanging in the hospital, our local hospital. I'm glad it's on display.
So it's still in the heart of the community, which is
Yeah,
amazing.
absolutely.
That's, I think,
We're
amazing.
trying to remember our history and not forgetting it.
Yeah. I think this is what is our role as an artist. We need to preserve the history.
Yeah,
It's definitely our role. Even if we are working as doing contemporary art, still we are preserving a moment for the
absolutely.
future. And this the same reflect the time of Queen Victoria, 18th century.
Yeah. Again, this is digital. I was doing some studies for some commission I was doing for a development in the Midlands. It's an old building, but they wanted to create some new art work, but based on the 18th century kind of or 17th century kind of. So this is reference material from that, which I've used in some of the artwork.
It's really nice. It really gives the feeling of that time. And the last type of art that is really interesting is that you experimented with abstract art. So the same, what are the techniques and how did you reach here?
Okay, well, abstract was trying to break all the rules.
Mm,
It's trying to forget everything that you've been taught or think you've learned.
yeah.
And whether you do this in acrylic, which is probably one of the best mediums for abstract art, but this one is digital. So again, digital gives you that freedom. What goes into this is really just madness. You come up with some strange concept. You start with a very vague outline of what you want to do, and then the colors just come to you. Once you get started, there's a big palette out there, so you just keep adding. And with digital art, because you can work with layers, it gives you the opportunity to sort of create those layers that you can see through. Some of those are they block the views. Others you can see little structures at the back. But again, there is no plan when I do the abstract art, and I like that because it's complete freedom.
Yes.
I'm not looking at anything. I don't need anything in front of me. I just need to step into my own subconscious and try and sort of bring some ideas together. So again, there is never a plan,
Yeah.
but there is an audience for
Yes.
abstract art or semi-abstract. Some of the images can be semi-abstract, but this is pure abstract. There is nothing real in there.
What is
And
what is interesting in your art, Sukhpal, is that there are so many topics,
yeah.
and it's interesting. How do you capture the moments for your artworks? Do you sketch physically in the place, or do you take pictures and then you finish the artworks in the studio? How do
Where
you work with this?
Okay, where it's possible, especially where you need references, if I'm in a place, I will try and do a sketch, but I will also take pictures at the same time. And the reason behind that is if you're trying to capture detail, there is no way you can recall all the minute detail, especially if it's a particular time of day and the light is falling in from a particular angle. You you may not remember that, and that then affects the whole mood of the painting. But once you've got those key references, whether it's a basic sketch or a photograph, you can use that as a basis. You can't use that to do the entire piece of art, but it gives you some strong grounds on which to base it. So again, that's the way I tend to work: is bring as much material as I can, and then especially with some large pieces of work, I will do quite a few sketches, as many sketches as I can. And now because I do digital, I tend to do quite a bit of the sketching on digital art,
Right.
which then, if it's a commission, it's much easier to show
Yes.
your sort of client what kind of things are possible. And then because it's a commission, it's their decision at the end what they want from it.
It is really impressive, Sukhpal. You know all your stories behind your paintings.
Thank you very
Um, so you know, for the young artists that they want to pursue a career into arts, do you have any advices for them how to carry on this passion?
much. First, you need to get engaged. In other words, you need to, whether you take lessons or whether you try and teach yourself, if you're doing this in school or college, make the most of it. Get as much as you can out of those lessons. If you need to do something outside of it, and if this is what you want to pursue, then follow that through. Don't let go. Don't give up at any time. If anyone says to you, this isn't good enough and it's not going to give you a career, ignore it, because that is where everything goes wrong. The number of people I've met, especially older people, when I've tried to show them the basics of drawing, all of them have said, oh, no, I can't paint or draw because I was told in my very early days I'm no good at it. And you've got to deal with those negative messages first. You've got to remove those and move on.
Yeah.
And if this is your passion, keep following it. There's so much scope now. Online, there is so much help. The
Yeah.
material that I have now got a chance to use are amazing. If you compare them with what they were years ago, we had nothing. Very, very basic stuff.
Yeah.
Yet the creativity remains, because creativity is your way of communicating with the world. And for young people, that communication is so important.
Mhm.
I'm not saying it's just drawing and painting you need to do, whether you follow music, photography,
Yeah.
drama, anything that you do. But for me, drawing and painting is the biggest stress relief. It takes me into a world which I can create, and I can live in that world for as long as I like. It soothes your nerves, it helps you settle things in your head. And what you create with that is completely different to everyone else. You don't need to copy anyone, you
Yeah.
just need to follow what is right for you. And you will develop your own style eventually. I mean, I sometimes look at my work and I keep thinking, I keep jumping from different styles to different places to doing different things. The reason is that's what engages me.
Mhm.
If I was to get myself stuck in one place doing one thing, I'd be bored out of my mind. I wouldn't
Yeah.
want to do it again. So it's about that growth and learning and constantly striving, finding the right way to learn and keep on doing it. But one key thing is practice.
Yeah.
You cannot stop practicing. You need to set yourself some targets, and you need to do that almost on a daily basis. But that will give you results that you'll look back and you'll be amazed. And one thing I say to my group: keep a drawing book. Start with your first sketch. Put a date on it. 6 months down the line, look at all the old work you've done,
Yeah.
and you will be amazed at how much progress you're making, because you will always make progress. All you need to do is be sincere and decide, this is my passion, this is what I want to do.
It is
And yeah,
completely
that's it.
true.
That's
And Sukhpal, is really interesting. Like when you talk with people who are practicing art, any art, like you said, can be dance, music, poetry, any
yeah,
art.
yeah,
These people are more peaceful. You feel they are content with themselves. So I think
absolutely.
this is what is the role of art. It brings you the peace into your life. You
It
reflect on yourself.
absolutely, absolutely. It
S-
creates that space for
Yeah.
you in
Yes.
your life that nothing else will create,
Yeah.
whether it's work, education, whatever else you're involved with. This is your own space that will give you that ability to manage and detach yourself, because a lot of the time we need to detach in order to sort of move on to the next stage. And there is a lot going on at the moment. And in times like this, you do need that.
Yeah.
You do need that little break from the harsh reality of the world. And maybe your artwork in the future will reflect that harsh reality. And maybe that's what you need to do. But that is what communication is all about. Your
Yeah.
artwork is communicating to the world what you see and how you see it. It's not about how other people see it. Same as writing. A writer writes about things that impact on them and how they see the world. Art is exactly the same.
Yeah.
You're reflecting the world the way you see it. I might want to go back to that idealized world of 30, 40 years ago, which actually doesn't exist anymore. But in my world, it does. And I
Yeah.
can go back into that world whenever I want and step out of it and deal with reality.
It is true, honestly. Thank you so much, Sukhpal, for your inspiring
Welcome.
stories and inspiring
Thank you.
advices. Hopefully, young people will really listen to your advice and they will follow, this path. And all your knowledge that you shared with us is really, really, admirable. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I've had fun. Thank
It
you very much.
was really, really pleasure, and your to share your artworks with everyone. It was so nice to see this. Um, Thank you, Sukhpal. And please, everyone, join us next week, the same Sunday, 3 o'clock. We're going to have another special guest. We're going to see the same their artworks. We're going to share stories, advices. Guys, anytime if you have any questions, just drop in the comment box. Ask the artists. All of them probably they'll be more than happy to answer your questions. And meanwhile, keep painting, keep doing art, and see you all next week for a new topic. Thank you so much, and thank you, Sukhpal, for joining us.
Thank you, Manuel. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye, bye, bye.